confess that you are going to hear a very unprepared speech. Because generally when I have gone for the release of the book, there have been hardly 10 to 12 or 15 people, and the whole affair always has been extremely drab, uninteresting and uninspiring. I had no idea that I am going to see such august assembly, such exceptional people. I would have been better prepared. Well, at the outset, I think we should thank Rakhshanda for this appreciable effort, which is perhaps necessary. It is the show of this gratitude is necessary because it is a kind of an irony that languages were made to communicate, and more often than not, languages become the barrier in communication. And in this wall, I think the only window you can find is the translation. When we read fiction from different societies, from different languages, obviously every language is rooted somewhere, we come to know two things which are ostensibly almost contradictory. One, how different people are. What kind of variety of culture or tradition or values you have. Another, which is exactly the opposite. How similar all people are. Both these informations are moving simultaneously. Literature, I think, ultimately develops, particularly fiction, develops a kind of empathy, understanding of other people by realizing that they have same aspirations, they have same desires, same dreams, same fears, same sense of deprivation, same joy of achievement that you and me have. This oneness, this togetherness of human race is informed to us by literature. I wonder what kind of tragedy it would have been in our life if we would not have been able to read Italian or French or Russian or German writers. We have read all of them, most of us. I mean, there must be some people who are so bilingual that they have read Alberto Moravio or say Maupassant or Solokhov in their own language. But generally, these great writers have been available to us through English or perhaps sometimes in our own vernacular language. Urdu definitely needs as many translations in India as possible. People should know about Urdu. They have some kind of either a romantic notion about Urdu or they have certain political biases. The romantic notion is बहुत खूबसूरत ज़माने जी क्या क्या word है इसमें. I have heard this. I am quoting. I have not made this. एक word जैसे कि जी ये एहसास महसूस एहसास. They think that Urdu means poetry and poetry about sharab, poetry about mehbooba. So it is a source of pleasure. It is a language of leisure and luxury. There are other people who feel that Urdu has been the communicator, the vehicle of fundamentalist and reactionary individual ideas. I think both of them are far from the truth. I can say it with great pride because Urdu happens to be my mother tongue, that unlike most of the languages in the world, Urdu has a distinction. If you get into the history of poetry of any language, any European language, you will realize that the poetry had started from religion, from hymns, from the praise of the God or the saints or the prophets. And then it transcended, and the other topics and other issues came into it. Urdu poetry is the only poetry, at least as far as I know, that was agnostic, irreligious, as a matter of fact, almost anti-religiosity, and definitely anti-fundamentalism, right from the word go. हाँ कुछ अबाउटेड था सोच रहे थे ठीक कह रहा है कि नहीं कह रहा ऐसा ना हो गलत बात पे ताली बजा Now in 30s there was a pan-Indian movement. I mean writers from Bengali, writers from Tamil, writers indigenous English writers, writers from Hindi, writers from Urdu, met in a small restaurant of London, and they thought that this is the time. It was early 30s, if I 32, September 32. Make it December 38. And they decided that time has come when we should, on conscious level, it was happening anyway in all the literature, one way or the other, maybe not so very focused, maybe not so very intentionally, but time has come when we have to use our pens, stories, poems, novels, against the imperialism, against the social injustice, against the economic inequality, and that gave birth within a few years to a movement which is known as progressive writers movement. All the writers of different languages became a part of it. Again I say it with great pride, and forgive me for this immodesty, but all the important Urdu writers were in the front line. Fans, or Majaz, or Jazbi, or Kafi, or Sardar Jafri, and so on, or Krishna Chandra, or Ismat Choktai, or Rana Singh Bedi, whether the poets or the short story writers, came 47, and the partition, which was perhaps the biggest massacre the planet has seen, the biggest exodus of human population from either side the planet has seen. And the kind of literature Urdu poetry in Urdu literature has created the kind of novels, short stories, poems. It's really awesome. It's awesome. The kind of novels have been written. Aur Insaan Mar Gaya by Raman Sagar, Gaddar by Krishna Chandra, so many short stories by Ismat Choktai, short stories by Minto. There is no end to literature. That how that tragedy, that great human tragedy, was mourned over and depicted by Urdu literature. And these were the years, at least for 40 years, the basic concern of Urdu short story writers, Urdu novelists, Urdu poets was social inequality, gender inequality. Now this word lesbian was not heard in Europe in 1940s or 30s. At that time, a story was written in India by a Urdu writer. A lady who was at that time 29, 30, in her late 50s, early 60s, wrote a novel which starts from Gupta period and ends after the partition of India. A novel with characters. It is the loss of the rest of the world that the world is not aware of it. Aag Ka Darya can be compared to any great novel in the world. The good Urdu poetry of Mir or Ghalib or Sauda is comparable. As a matter of fact, I am saying comparable because I don't want to sound arrogant and boasting, to any poet in the world. I just can't resist saying that poets like Shelley and Keats, if they would have been Urdu poets, they would have been considered as B grade. And I mean it. My father had edited 2 editions. Hindustan Hamara. And if you go through that, you see a side of Urdu that not many people are aware of. There is no Hindu deity who has not been written about in Urdu poetry and who has not been rejoiced. There is no Hindu festival that has not been celebrated. I don't think in India any language can give you better poetry or Holi than Nazir. If you take the history of last 200 years, political history, there is no political movement, there is no political juncture of freedom movement. There is no stage of freedom movement on which Urdu has not written, and written so well, so very competently. But people are not aware. I'm sure that when you will read these stories, you will know what Urdu writers have been doing. But how little, leave aside the literature, how little people know about Urdu. I have heard, now again you think that I am cracking some kind of a joke, but it would have been a joke if it would not have been as tragic. In Bombay, an educated lady, one day out of curiosity and total innocence, asked me, Javed, उर्दू तो बाबर के साथ आई थी ना? मैंने कहा हाँ, वो घोड़े पे था, ये पीछे बढ़ते में था. This is the knowledge people have of Urdu. I'm in Delhi. Delhi is predominantly Punjab now. There is a huge population that belongs to Punjab, and that Punjab that is perhaps not anymore in India, that part of Punjab. As a matter of fact, that part of this part, they have contributed, the writers of Punjab, so much. You cannot think of Urdu literature, whether prose or poetry of 20th century, without thinking of Punjab. So often I hear, सर हमारे जो फादर हैं, अब दादा हो गया, थोड़ा एक जनरेशन चेंज हो गई. मेरे जो ग्रैंडफादर थे सर, वो तो उर्दू ही पढ़ते थे और उर्दू में ही लिखते थे. हमारे घर में तो उर्दू पेपर आते थे उनकी वजह से. तो अगर ग्रैंडफादर पढ़ते थे या फादर पढ़ते थे, ये तुम्हारी लैंग्वेज थी, इसको क्यों छोड़ दिया? Why have you left? Because Pakistan says that this is our language. Pakistan says Kashmir also belongs to them. You have not accepted that. Why have you accepted this one? It's your language. मुझे बहुत शिकायत है पंजाब से, इसलिए कि उनका जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है उर्दू में वो अनबिलीवेबल है. मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि पता नहीं कितने राम सिंह बेदी हैं जो आज उर्दू नहीं पढ़ रहे हैं, कितने फैज हैं जो उर्दू नहीं पढ़ रहे, कितने अहमद नजीम कासमी हैं जो उर्दू नहीं पढ़ रहे, जितने जोगेंद्र पाल हैं जो उर्दू नहीं पढ़ रहे, कितने लोग हैं, क्या क्या लिखा। ये एक और नाम मुझे याद आया, आप लोग भूल गए होंगे शायद, बहुत अच्छा शायर था वो, जल्दी मर गया शराब पी पी के, प्रेमवाल भटनी, गुड पॉइंट। कैसे कैसे जो जिन नॉवेल्स का मैंने आपसे जिक्र किया है, वो और इंसान मर गया या गद्दार, ये भी तो पंजाब के ही लोग की लिखी हुई, रामन सागर, कृष्णचंद्र। चलिए बहुत से हम हैं, ये भी सही, लेकिन in the end, once again I would like to thank Rakhshanda, who is definitely a very selfless, sincere, committed person, and whatever she is doing, I can say it with total confidence that there is no personal agenda, there is no desire for personal glorification in whatever she does. It is so rare and it has to be appreciated. And I would like to thank all those people who have translated these short stories. They have done something which was really needed. Thank you very much.
There are as many translators involved in it. So let's say 50-55 people have come together to actually produce this one book. I'm simply the editor and I've written an introduction to contextualize my choice. Just as many people have helped. And to make the selection of 30 stories, I've read dozens upon dozens of stories over many, many years. So I've been trawling and fishing in a sea of stories to come up with this 30. There are some contributors who are present in this hall. I want to acknowledge their presence and to thank them. I can see Aseem Ashraf Sahab there. There is Javed sitting here. My apologies for those faces that I'm not able to see in this very bright light. There are some translators also present here. I can see Bushra Alvi here. Saif Mahmood is somewhere there. And I know there are several more whom I cannot see, but my grateful thanks to all of you for making this possible. No green, no domes.
So taking on from that, there are some stories which, as I was working on them, and a lot of people discussed about these stories. So I just want to quickly, focus on these, and then we can move on. The floor will be open for question and answer after this, both to Javed Akhtar Sahab as well as Rakhshanda.
नई कहानी लिखी जा रही है, जो नया कहानी लिखने मॉडर्न जदीद कहानीकार है, ये बहुत सी चीजें सिंबल के जरिए, मेटाफर के जरिए कहता है. ये जो भेड़ें हैं जो स्लॉटर हाउस की तरफ ले जाई जा रही हैं, हाँकती भी, ये एक मेटाफर है हर्ड मेंटालिटी का, और उनका कोई नाम नहीं है, वो एक क्राउड का हिस्सा है, और उस क्राउड में वो उनकी कोई इंडिविजुअल पहचान है ही नहीं, वो एक ही डंडे से सबको हाँका जा रहा है. और ये हम सब रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में ये चीज देखते हैं कि सबको एक डंडे से हाँका जा रहा है, उनमें से कोई कुछ नहीं कहने की कोशिश करता है. तो मेरे ख्याल से जो मेरी समझ है, खुर्शीद अकरम साहब ने भी और कई लोगों ने इस कलेक्शन में मेटाफर के जरिए, सिंबल के जरिए बहुत सी बातें कही हैं. और शायद न्यू राइटिंग की बात ही कुछ ये है कि जो सोशली इंगेज लिटरेचर की आपने जावेद साहब ने पहले बात की थी, सोशली इंगेज लिटरेचर में डिटेल बहुत हुआ करती थी. मतलब एक फ्रेम था जो ठस भरा हुआ था माइन्यूट डिटेल से. आप कृष्णचंद्र की कहानियां देख लीजिए और देख लीजिए, मतलब आसमान का रंग और पत्तों का रंग और सब चीजें जिक्र की जाती थी. आज का जो लिखने वाला है वो आपको एक ब्रॉड स्ट्रोक से कहानी बताता है. उन ब्रॉड स्ट्रोक से, अगेन आई एम नॉट मेकिंग अ जनरलाइजेशन, लेकिन कई कहानियां इसमें ऐसी हैं जिसमें तफसील में जाए बगैर एक समा खींचा जाता है, और उसके जरिए इट इज लेफ्ट टू द रीडर टू इन्फर. सो in many ways these stories are very open-ended.